Welcome to the Dr. Franken Steve Podcast with your hosts, Dr. Frank Williams and Dr. Steve Snodgrass, MD, FACS, where we discuss a broad range of topics without limitations. Let's get to it. Here's Dr. Frank and Dr. Steve.
Hello, welcome back. This is the Dr. Franken Steve Podcast. Today, our podcast is going to be a little different than some of the health topics and art topics and health and healing concerning the arts that we do. As we told you, we do a wide variety of different podcasts, and we have a lot scheduled. If you have a suggestion, you're more than happy to email us anytime. You can get us through any of the links or through our YouTube channel or Apple or any of those that you listen to the podcast on. We're more than happy to hear your comments, your likes, your dislikes, which we'll ignore, and we'll just go on from there. So today we're going to be covering actually something we're going to do about every state, but we're covering what the state of Kentucky is famous for and how the state of Kentucky came about. So it's a little different, but it's kind of lighthearted, and everyone needs a little bit of that in this geopolitical climate right now. So you can sit back, even if you don't like Kentucky. I'm sure there's something that you do in your everyday life that's actually affected by Kentucky or someone in the state of Kentucky, either past, present, or possibly coming up in the future. So if you don't know a lot about Kentucky, Kentucky is it's one of the 14 smallest states. However, Kentucky came to be in 1792 as like the 15th state of the nation. Kentucky has a lot of trails, and it's actually the first state west of the Appalachian Mountains. So it's got kind of a unique blend of, pioneer spirit and fighting men, because Kentucky is one of the places known for having some of the most devout patriots in the world. And if you look back at the War of 1812, the vast majority of soldiers that were killed were actually from Kentucky, which is to me kind of fascinating.
Duck.
Yes, duck. Yes, that might help. So some of the things I want to talk about is what Kentucky's famous for, and I'm going to let Steve jump in because Steve is a native here of Kentucky. Mm-hmm. I'm an immigrant, being a Yankee. I kind of came over the wall to come down here almost 20 years ago, but just absolutely love it. Kentucky's known for a variety of things, and a lot of people don't realize some of the things that were invented in Kentucky. The actual first commercial steamboat was actually invented and made here in Kentucky, in Louisville, actually, and went from like Louisville to New Orleans for trade and everything. They opened a big canal to go back and forth for commercial goods, and a lot of that's still used to today, which is amazing to me, with all the different modes of transportation. Kentucky was also the runner-up, whether you believe this or not, because you can search it through historical data. Kentucky.gov has most of this. Kentucky was the runner-up. They almost picked Kentucky for being the nation's capital, but we did not have, in the state of Kentucky, enough access to major waterways. So they went with, they went to Washington.
They should have gone with Kentucky.
Yes, they should have. Been the nation's capital, and not just for tobacco. Mm-hmm. Some of the things that come out of Kentucky, some of the most famous things that come out of Kentucky, and get to my little notes here, so I make sure I quote all these correctly. There's a gentleman named Garrett Morgan. Some of you may be familiar with him, may not. He's a black gentleman, born in the 1800s. He actually the one that invented, he was born to slave-free parents, but he actually invented the traffic light. So he came up with that. He also invented the precursor or the actual first gas mask. Fascinating stories if you read up on it and read up through the history. Again, his name's Garrett Morgan, and that's where we get our traffic lights are based off that today. The gas masks that are used in World War I and II, and the gas masks we have today are all from his original design based off that, which I think that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it is. As a matter of fact, yesterday I was going from one destination to the other, which was kind of lengthy, going down our busiest road, Scottsville Road, mm-hmm. and I hit every light green. How about that? I feel like now I know that Garrett was with me.
Yeah, yeah.
So there we go.
I thought you were going to say traffic lights might have been invented in Kentucky, but nobody in Kentucky actually uses them.
Well, it's like over by my house, there's I live close to the interstate intersection, if you will, and they really kind of made a mess in that whole area when they did reconstructed it. And it's the only place I've ever seen in my life. Kentucky might be the only place it's at, but it's got like so many people make a mistake that they have to do U-turns to get back on the interstate because they, for whatever reason. And it's got a sign up there that says U-turns have the right of way. Then I was going like, I've never seen that before. Have you?
No. And from a law enforcement background, that's I can see where they're trying to save accidents and the fact that the people doing the U-turn may not be paying attention either.
But I mean, it's like if you're going to go right on red, and then you got somebody over here that's going to do a U-turn, you think like, well, I'm going right on red and I'm going in the right direction. I've got the right of way, but that's not the case.
Not if you see that sign, apparently.
That sign is like U-turns have right of way.
That's why most people in Kentucky believe that turn signals on a vehicle are an optional extra they just don't get.
Yeah. And I ended up being in a car wreck. I ended up getting back-ended from like a guy that was driving this F-150 with hauling like his living room. But there was a guy in front of me that pulled a U-turn, and so it slowed everything down. So I had to slam on my brakes to keep from hitting him, and the guy behind me didn't. And so that U-turn caused the wreck.
Wow.
So there we go. But they have the right of way, so I'm just saying it's unusual.
Yes.
For what it's worth.
Yeah. The university, looking at Kentucky, and we're going to jump from here to there, obviously. The first self-contained artificial heart transplant was actually done here in Kentucky. Was done, I think it was, with the patients lived about 151 days with the device. Robert Tools, I think was his name. Yes, Robert Tools. University of Louisville. And then UK medical schools come up with several different, I won't say inventions, but I guess it would be processes and procedures for people to prolong people's life and stuff. And it's amazing because a lot of people think, oh, they're barefoot and got a jug of whiskey. But but there is the amount of actors and famous groups and people that come out of Kentucky is just amazing. I mean, you have so many people that are famous actors and actresses that come out of Kentucky that a lot of people don't even realize. Just to name a few, you got like Warnock, you got what is his name?
Well, Johnny Depp is from Kentucky.
Yes.
I know that. And Jennifer Lawrence.
Yes. Harry Stanton, George Clooney. There are several. Jim Varney, Billy Ray Cyrus is from Kentucky. A lot of people assume he's from Tennessee. He's not. He's from Kentucky, actually. Diane Sawyer wasn't born to. And one of the big ones, which I know you like, besides some of the old actors like William Conrad, is Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty incredible.
It is.
He goes back a long way and obviously touts his Louisville roots. The thing about him that I want to go on a minor rant, but to see what he did realistically, to see what he did and survive all of that, because I started looking I've always been interested in boxing and just the martial arts and all that sort of thing, obviously while I'm here, but I remember seeing Riddick Bowe fight Evander Holyfield for the World Heavyweight Championship, and I was ringside. Like, I really got, it was a long story how I got there, and I won't go into that, but I got there.
Thank you.
And yes, but I remember Riddick Bowe weighed 242, Holyfield weighed 212, and when they hit each other, it was like this thud. And like you could see, I was close enough to see the sweat and the blood and all this kind of stuff, but it was like Riddick Bowe hit him so hard. He was a lot bigger, and it was just like that would fracture our livers, our spleen, without question. So I remember Holyfield fell through the ropes, and he kind of looked in my direction. I was looking right in his eyes, and he looked like he had been in a car wreck. He looked like he just hit his head on a windshield, and got up and fought 2 more rounds. He lost the fight, but the fact that he could still fight after that was amazing. And what Ali went through with Frazier and Foreman and all that, it's just unbelievable to just survive all that. And I put it in perspective. I just want to go on this little tangent about pounds per square inch and punches. Because like they said, reportedly what I had read in the literature was like your average man, if you will, a punch would be about 150 pounds per square inch. But MMA or a boxer or professional would be 800 to 1500, kind of depending on weight class and all that sort of thing. And I remember Ali being interviewed when he took the Ernie Shavers fight. He thought that was going to be like, oh, that's a cakewalk. But Ernie Shavers was known as the hardest hitting human. And Ali and all, they knew that he was not a bum, but they thought like, well, we'll just walk right over that. But anyway, Ali said like he hit me so hard, he shook my kinfolk back in Africa.
Oh my God.
And when you do the literature on it and you look at some of the things written about Ernie Shavers, just an incredible person and what he's done. I mean, he's really made a positive impact from what I've read. But his punches were like at 1,600 pounds per square inch. And to put it in perspective, 1,700 pounds per square inch will break human femur, the hardest bone there is to break in the human body, which I broke mine in a bike wreck. And a great white shark that's 21 feet has a bite force of 4,000 pounds per square inch. But the whole point is, imagine taking those kinds of hits to the body and to the head. And to see what he did, and not to mention just the pure physical exhaustion of fighting in the heat and all that sort of thing, he really was the greatest. He really was.
Yeah, that's a lot of pounding over the years he did that.
Oh, just unbelievable. And of course he had the Parkinson's and all that, Parkinson's disease, and one too many Frazier hits or whatever. But I mean, it's amazing that kind of power can be unleashed onto your body, your organs, and your skull, and you can literally walk away from it.
Yeah, there are some great athletes that come out of Kentucky. There's some great brands also. Like a lot of people don't realize the amount of corporations that were actually started here in Kentucky, the famous from insurance like Humana to Yumi Brands, that's a well-known brand. You've got Fruit of the Loom, Papa John's, the Texas Roadhouse, Dippin' Dots, of course, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and then the A&W restaurants, Big Ass Fans. If you're not familiar with this, one of the most popular fans out there. Of course, Churchill Downs, Fazoli's, all those. Houchin Industries, which is massive. And, a lot of people don't realize that the Kentucky Derby is so big. I mean, they know it is, but they don't realize they own 100 and some different racetracks. And the Kentucky Derby, it actually traces its roots back to another gentleman who started, building a round track around his house because he came here, he hated everything about Britain, where he came from, the Queen, the horse racing, the poshness, the servants, all that, but he wanted to change it, and that's what he did. Then, the Derby took over, and the Derby is actually the longest running sporting event in the United States. Did you know that?
No, I did not.
Yeah, during Derby Day, for those of you who like little libations, they do on that day. There's normally served mint juleps.
Yeah, there's
over 120,000 served that day normally and made.
Yeah,
and then bourbon, over 7,000 liters of bourbon are consumed that day. So
that's a lot.
I would say the next thing that sells the most would be aspirins.
Probably
for
so.
Hangovers.
I've been to the Derby one time and I went in such a great way. I never probably will go back again, but I think it's something that if you can see it one time in person, it's worth the trip. It's worth going to see because it's not just a horse race. I mean, it's just an absolute global event. And anytime, the world and the media, when they come to your state like that, it's really remarkable. And it's a beautiful, especially like if it's a beautiful sunny day in May, and it's a great place.
And those ladies in all their hats. I mean, we've had derby parties, my wife and daughters, and we get them giant hats, and it's just a spectacle, but it's all in good fun.
It's an event. It really is an event. Yeah.
For something that only lasts, a couple minutes and done. Yeah. Literally. You have all kinds of brands, like I said, that food. Kentucky is known for some of the best cuisine as far as Southern cooking goes. You have brands like Duncan Hines that's actually from our area here in Bowling Green, Kentucky. You have Camping World, which is the largest camping supplier in the world, basically, for what they do. It's just amazing to me, all the stuff that comes out of here.
And I did read where, because, there was a song named Bowling Green, and it was by the Everly Brothers, Don and Phil. And I started looking them up because there's going to be a lot of people that watch this that never heard of the Everly Brothers, probably. I mean, they go back a ways. Let's just get down to it. I mean, they were in the 50s. And, but I didn't realize that, Bowling Green is the song. You can hear it on Spotify. It's a great song, of course. But, and they come from Kentucky originally, but that was their last top 40 U.S. hit.
Oh, wow.
And, they signed the first $1 million record deal, which back in the day, it was Elvis Presley and Pat Boone and all that sort of thing. But the Everly Brothers were the first one to sign $1 million contract.
It wasn't Korean boy bands?
It was not.
Okay.
Came a little later. Of course, the Everly Brothers set them up. And Rolling Stone magazine ranked the Everly Brothers as the #1 duo in history.
Wow.
Which is, when you look at...
When a lot of people have never even heard of them.
No. And, I mean, there's Simon and Garfunkel and Hall & Oates and all those things, but the Everly Brothers were voted #1. And they had arguably the most influence on the Beatles. And Paul McCartney had said that. And he said that so much so, they copied a lot of their vocal harmonies. And he called himself Don, and John was Phil. They compared themselves to the Everly Brothers. So, and then they put them in a song. Paul McCartney and Wings put them in a song and let them in. So to pay homage to how great they were. And a lot of people never even heard of them. So I think we need to resurrect them.
Yes.
Because they were great. They really were great.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to me. I mean, we moved to Kentucky because of family and just love the area, the weather, the scenery and everything, and it's just, we fell in love with Kentucky and this area, and have just never looked back. It's as a fascinating history as an outsider as I look through it and study. You talk about cultural diversity even. Back in the day in 1875, something you may not know, 13 of the 15 jockeys were actually black.
I didn't know that.
No, most people don't. That's amazing to me. And then the Red Rose became that official, flower of the Derby in 1904. And what was it? The first live radio broadcast of the Derby was 1925. And then the Derby was originally ran on different days until about 1931. And then it became the first Saturday in May, and it stayed there. Like I said, a lot of people have no clue about a lot of this. And then that mint julep, that cocktail we were talking about, that was actually 1938 is when that became the official drink. And then the first local televised broadcast, and that was my ignorance because I didn't realize televisions were around back then, which they may have showed at like theaters or something, which they used to do, was actually televised and broadcasted in 1949. Do you remember that?
I do not.
Okay.
I do not.
And the first national televised broadcast was in 1952.
And they've got these bourbon trails going back to bourbon, and they've got these bourbon trails, and they're really very famous.
Yeah, Bardstown, Kentucky. We love going. We're going there, sometime over the fall. My daughters and my father-in-law Love to go there and just sit and people watch, and they go walking around, and you can do all the bourbon runs, and they have great bed and breakfasts, and they also have like a wineries, but the bourbon runs are some of the most famous for people.
Yeah, and it's a the Bluegrass Parkway that people should travel that road just for a road trip one time, just to see the horse farms and how gorgeous they are just outside of Lexington. It's just magnificent. But on another topic, you mentioned Camping World. I want to go over that just briefly, because this is we got to throw just a little bit of health related topic in here. But I knew the founder of that of Camping World. I knew it, and really nice person. And I wouldn't call him a friend, but I would call him an acquaintance. But anyway, he died at age 71. He fell off his roof cleaning out gutters, and what can you say? It's like you hate to see it for anybody, but it's like he's 71 and his net worth was just phenomenal. And so ladder safety is something that was like, I treated a patient one time. She was morbidly obese, right? I'm talking probably 100 some odd pounds plus overweight. And she was cleaning out her gutters, fell off of a ladder, and she came to the emergency room, and she had her tibia was sticking out of her skin. So she had a compound fracture of her tibia. Plus she ruptured her spleen. She didn't rupture her spleen, she shattered her spleen. So she was bleeding to death. So I had to take her to the operating room and, took what was ever there of her spleen, took it out. She got her leg fixed, and, she survived the accident. But I just said, just for the sake of asking, I said, this is just for my own edification. But why didn't you just hire somebody to clean out your gutters? Because let's face it, you on a ladder, it just did not work.
Conducive to
it just did not work. And she said, well, I just wanted to save a little money and that sort of thing. I said, I get that, I get it. But at the end of the day, was it really worth it?
Yeah, and how much money are you saving now?
Yeah, and she said, well, if I had it to do over with again, I'd just write the check. I said, that's just a good idea. And when my wife has asked me to get on a ladder to do something, my DIY skills, right?
Yes, I do.
Yes, and
non-existent.
And I said, wait a minute, you're asking me to climb on that ladder? Did I hear you correctly? It's that's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen, because when you treat patients that have been in those horrific kind of accidents and everything, you remember that, you remember it.
You don't have to be very high up on a ladder to get hurt either.
No, and I looked at the data on it, and I was pretty stunned. They said 500,000 patient treatments per year, 500,000, 300 deaths, and they say the attributable cost of ladder injuries is $24 billion a year. So think about it. I mean, if nothing else, if you don't get anything else at all from this,
you got Steve's medical tangent inserted in.
Yes, don't be climbing up ladders and cleaning out gutters yourself. That's just a little hint, So back over to you.
Okay. Anyway, getting back to Kentucky, and a lot of people don't realize Kentucky is. It's a huge birthplace for ingenuity. Many people think that the oil wells, the first oil wells were in Texas. They weren't. It was here in Kentucky. So that the commercial oil well was let's see where that was at, in Cumberland River area. And a lot of people have a lot of things to be thankful for. When you sing the Happy Birthday song, that was composed in 1893 by two sisters from Louisville.
I wonder if they sang it when they were on a ladder.
I hope not. If they did, hopefully they were singing to their mama, because Mother's Day was actually originated here in Kentucky too.
Really?
That's where it comes from, yes.
Well, I didn't know that.
It was a Henderson school teacher. She created this in honor of her mama, is the way she put it.
Yeah.
So I think that's, you got the Hatfield McCoys, obviously.
Mother's Day stuck.
That did. So the happy birthday song. That's what most school systems teach kids, to clean their hands, sing the happy birthday song, and that's how long your hands should be in soapy water doing that. So there's just a myriad amount of things that goes on, and it has happened here in Kentucky that, you can make light of, or you can actually embrace, and it is pretty incredible. America wouldn't be America without Kentucky, basically. Kentucky has some of the largest coal mines. We have the largest cave system in the world, bar none. We have the world's largest underground zip lines. If you're a sports fan, you like zip lining. People make a whole camping adventures out of that. And the first enamel bathtub was actually here in Kentucky. Most people don't realize that, even with the jokes about bathing.
I was going to say.
I knew you were. I just knew you were.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different rich historical, situations and creations around the state of Kentucky. And of course, we're going to be doing many of the states, if not all of them, over a period of time. But it's just that when you take a look at Kentucky and you take a look at what it has to offer, it's just a beautiful place. It's a very red state, but we have a Democratic governor. And so, we're pretty moderate for the most part, but very conservative. No matter where you fall in the political landscape, Kentuckians will embrace you, basically. And so, like Bowling Green, we have a huge international community here that came in through the Federal Relocation Center that are all make up, the Bowling Green, Warren County area and different parts of Kentucky. So, and they actually came in the legal way, so we welcome them. No political pun intended either.
I'm just going to sit here and listen. I'm just going to be like somebody out there watching the podcast. I'm just listening.
Please send all those complaints to Frank at williamsnodgrassart.com.
Yes, contact Frank.
Some of the things that have helped shape the world, let alone Kentucky, was that General John T. Thompson. Are you familiar with him, Steve?
I don't know him.
Okay.
No.
I hope you wouldn't, because he'd been gone for a little while. He was born in Newport, Kentucky in 1860, and he is the inventor of the Thompson submachine gun, or the Tommy gun.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fascinating. And the Tommy gun was actually, was invented in like 1918 when he came out with it. And then in 1921, it was placed into service. And during World War II, it was used they wanted something he did to combat, because he was a general, to combat trench warfare, because it was very hard with the long rifles and all that. So the Tommy gun took a little bit of time to get in, because they didn't want people taking the fully automatic machine gun and just firing it without actually aiming. So it took a little while, but then it became popular. And then during World War II, there were 1.5 million of those Tommy guns that were produced in service.
Wow.
So that's incredible. And they're still used up to this day.
Yeah. And didn't the criminals love those guns too?
Oh, yeah. I mean, from Al Capone to Bonnie and Clyde, you name it. I mean, that was the Chicago. I mean, a lot of law enforcement agencies used it, from the U.S. Postal Inspectors, the FBI, state troopers. I mean, it became one of the most iconic weapons in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty, I would say pretty deadly, especially given the time that it was used. That would be a remarkable weapon.
Yep. And then getting back to other things that people would assume doesn't go necessarily with Kentucky, like civil rights. Kentucky was the first state for a statewide comprehensive civil rights act that was passed, and that was in 1966 here. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people realize all the racial riots, the Jim Crow era, and all that from the Democrats. And they don't, a lot of times they don't associate that with Southern states. Mm-hmm. But, the South is so full of rich history. And like I said, you look back at the original Derby, 13 of the 15 original jockeys were black, which to me is amazing. And if you look at just the number of high-end colleges that you have around, that are nationally known, Louisville, UK, all those, even our own WKU now, which is a Division I college, it's amazing at the amount, at the amount of, educational systems. And they got some great private colleges here, religious colleges, that Kentucky's so full of, and it has such a rich history with. And a lot of people don't realize, Kentucky and its hemp industry, they legalized it in 2013 for the growing of hemp. And that was obviously for, it's an important cash crop for Kentucky because of rope and sailcloth and all that. And now Kentucky, obviously in 2025, will have the medical marijuana by those who are licensed to do all that. But just overall, from a native Ohioan who came to Kentucky, has just fell in love with the culture and the history. Like I said, you can travel. We've been through the cave systems with my family and I. My wife and I like to travel around. Bardstown's one of our favorite places. We've been to Daniel Boone National Forest and all that. Fascinating. There's just so much. You don't even have to travel outside of the state that you could spend years just, constantly.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And so, I just think Kentucky's, it is a beautiful place, and I'm sure many states are. We're just covering Kentucky for today.
That's right.
So, did you have more that you had your little?
No, I think I've ranted enough. I'm good.
A Kentuckian that doesn't talk much. Okay, so well, we appreciate your time, and I hope you got some insight. I hope you picked up some things that may spurn your interest to go do some research, not just on Kentucky, but possibly your own state and where you're from. So nothing wrong with having that pride as a immigrant here.
Come visit us. Your shoes are optional.
I knew you were wrong. I didn't say that.
Shoes are optional. I personally, I love going barefooted. Sorry, I do. Yeah, but shoes are optional, but probably best to wear them in public.
Yes. I'm a hoop.
Well, anyway, it is a great state, and it's absolutely beautiful. And I went to medical school at the University of Kentucky and rotated up through Eastern Kentucky, what you had talked about with the coal mines and the black lung and all that sort of thing. So I mean, there's a lot of diversity in the state, and that each region has so much to offer.
Yeah, it has its own unique. You got those that are closer to the Appalachian areas that have a rich history in itself with art and tapestries and all that.
And you got to listen if you want a little bit about Kentucky. Obviously, My Old Kentucky Home, a famous song, but also John Prine, who's deceased now, but sang about Muhlenberg County, which is a fabulous song. It's one of the most popular bluegrass songs ever.
Oh, wow.
So, if you want to get a little bit of that flavor of the coal mines and all that sort of thing, John Prine.
That's right.
Kentucky,
we didn't cover a lot of, but it has a lot of rich history with its artists.
Yeah.
And it have made a major contribution in all areas of art. And so we love it, and we hope you will too, and come visit anytime. I said Bowling Green, this area that we live in, always makes one of the top 10 for the fastest growing cities, best cities to live in, best cities to retire in, best cities to start a business and raise a family. So you can't go bad or go wrong by doing that. So
should we say like y'all come back now? You hear?
Steve, I'm talking, Steve. Okay. All right, we want to thank you, and we will see you at the next podcast.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Dr. Franken Steve Podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit follow or subscribe on the link provided so you can stay up to date on new episodes. Until next time, stay healthy and stay safe.